Why are you here? Let's enjoy ourselves now. As I stood in the doorway of my own mountain home, looking at my sister's husband relaxing in my deck's jacuzzi, the words came to me like a smack. My sister and her 2 children were helping themselves to the food I had put in my refrigerator 3 days prior, as I could see through the windows. The air was filled with the aroma of grilled steaks, my pricey cuts from the Denver butcher. My mouth tightened, but I made myself grin. Yes, you all like it. Without saying another word, I turned around, grabbed my weekend bag, and headed back to my car. I heard laughter behind me. I didn't stop when my sister yelled something like, "Don't be so dramatic." With my hands holding the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, I climbed into my car, turned on the ignition, and drove down the mountain road. I'm 29 years old, and my name is Erica. In Boulder, Colorado, I handle projects for Northrise Apparel. And for months, I had been anticipating this weekend. It had been a terrible 3 weeks. A product launch that almost failed, back-to-back deadlines, and an abrupt resignation from a team member. This respite was much needed. I needed my cabin's silence, the sound of pine trees blowing, and the serenity that came with being by myself. My sister, however, clearly had different ideas. I had owned the cabin for 2 years. To pay for the down payment, I had worked extra hours, made sacrifices, saved money, and missed vacations. With a view of the mountains that made every struggle worthwhile, it was situated on 3 acres close to Breen Ridge. When I purchased it, my family had been dubious. According to my mother, the cost was prohibitive. My father questioned why I required so much solitude. Vanessa, my sister, had chuckled and remarked that I was making too much effort to prove anything. Vanessa was 32 years old, married to Craig, and had 2 kids, a girl who was 5 years old and a boy who was 7. She had always been our family's golden kid. She appeared to lead the life our parents had always desired for us both, getting married young and having children immediately. I was the odd one out, single, career-focused, and seemingly too self-reliant for my own good. The cabin I had purchased was a haven, a place where I could breathe and where no one could dictate to me what I should do with my life or when I should start a family. I had communicated to my family that this was my private area. When Vanessa had asked to borrow it for a weekend last summer, I had even told her straight out. No, I told her. I clarified that I required a single, exclusive space. At the moment, she had appeared to be understanding. She had claimed to understand. She had even expressed regret for asking, but it was obvious that their agreement had run out. As I drove down the winding mountain road toward Boulder, my phone started vibrating. I looked at the display. Vanessa. I let the voicemail go. She gave another call. Voicemail. Then a text message showed up. Why are you acting so strangely? We are related. You are able to share. I stopped at a petrol station and sat there for a while, trying to take in the situation. It took me 3 hours to drive to my cabin. I had planned to hike the routes I liked, packed my favorite novels, and pictured myself enjoying coffee and silence on my porch on Saturday morning. Rather, I discovered that my sister's family was using my area as if it were a public park. How had they entered at all? The only key was mine. Then I recalled. Vanessa had requested to borrow a key for emergencies last Christmas. She expressed concern that I might be up there by myself. She claimed that knowing she could check on the location in case of an emergency would ease her mind. Despite my hesitation, I gave Vanessa a backup key because our mother had been sitting there nodding along and complimenting her on her thoughtfulness. I had informed her that it was just for dire situations. There was no emergency. I texted her back, "You didn't ask." She replied right away. I didn't believe I needed to. It's only a hut. Not even every weekend do you use it. Those words made me look at them. Only a cabin. As though 2 years of hardship and saving were in vain. As if I had an inexplicable yearning for privacy. As if the fact that I wasn't utilizing something constantly meant that my boundaries didn't matter. I didn't answer. I turned on the ignition and headed back to my Boulder apartment. My mind is racing, and my weekend is destroyed. I kept thinking about Craig laughing at me in my jacuzzi. Vanessa's cavalier dismissal of my feelings was something I would never forget. I was also unable to stop thinking about how my family always looked to me to share, compromise, and make provisions for everyone else. Not now. The sun had already fallen by the time I arrived home. After dropping my bag on the floor, I entered my apartment and took a seat on my couch. I had lost my anger. I was something more purposeful, something colder. I took out my phone and began compiling a list. I awoke the following morning with the same icy clarity that had surrounded me the previous evening. I sat at my kitchen table, brewed coffee, and got to work on my research. I needed to understand exactly what my options were. Legally, I own the cabin. The deed has my name on it. Every bill related to the mortgage was paid by me, and it was in my name. Other than the spare key I'd stupidly handed her, Vanessa had no claim to it. However, I was familiar with my family. There would be drama if I just asked to have the key returned. Vanessa would weep. I would get calls from my mother accusing me of selfishness. I was exaggerating, according to my father. They had already done it. I'd learned as a child that it was impolite to set limits with my family. I requested a lock for my bedroom door when I was 16 years old because Vanessa kept entering and taking my clothes without my permission. My mom had declined, claiming that doors weren't locked by families. My parents were upset that I didn't want them to have a spare key when I moved into my first apartment at the age of 22. I wasn't excluding them, despite what they had claimed. I was defending myself. I had seen a trend throughout the years. I would always say yes when Vanessa asked for something, money, time, or assistance with the kids, because it felt impossible to say no. She was praised by our parents for being a kind mother, and I was praised for being a helpful sister. However, nobody ever inquired about my needs. Nobody ever thought I might have boundaries. I had vowed to myself when I purchased the cabin. It would be different here. I would have this. Vanessa had now broken that rule. I called a Greenwich locksmith on Saturday morning. I clarified that I had to have my cabin's locks changed as quickly as possible. On Monday morning, the locksmith indicated he could do the task. I hung up after thanking him. I then gave my property manager a call. The cabin was a member of a homeowners association and a small community with common facilities. I inquired about any policies about visitors or unapproved use of the property. The manager, Beverly, was a nice woman who explained that although owners were accountable for anyone they permitted on their land, it was trespassing if someone was present without authorization. Trespassing. It was a satisfying term. Beverly inquired as to how things were going. I wanted to make sure I knew my rights because I had some unexpected guests, I told her. She advised me to contact the local sheriff's office if I needed assistance. I made a note and thanked her. I had a plan by Saturday afternoon. I had no intention of shouting or making a scene. Seeing me upset was not something I wanted to give my family. I would remain composed, systematic, and fully within my rights. Sunday went by without incident. Neither Vanessa nor my mother called me. I watched a movie, cleaned my place, and went for a run. I had a weird feeling of calm knowing what I was going to do. I traveled back up to the cabin on Monday morning. To ensure the locksmith would arrive at 9 o'clock, I had contacted them in advance. Vanessa's car was still parked in the driveway when I got there. I could see her children watching TV through the windows. Craig was sipping coffee on the terrace. The door was knocked on. Vanessa looked astonished as she opened it. My calm response was, "Oh, hey. I thought you went home." "I did," I answered. Her statement, "Now I'm back. We're actually still using the place," seemed to clarify everything. "Since the children don't have school on Monday, we plan to stay." I remarked, "That's not going to work," and she chuckled. "Come on, Eric. Don't act this way. I own this, and we are family." I said, "You must now pack and depart." Her smile faded. "Are you serious?" "Completely." Craig appeared behind her, still holding his coffee mug. "What's going on?" Vanessa's voice took on a typical plaintive tone as she stated, "She wants us to leave. The kids are having a great time." "What's the big deal?" I said slowly, "The big deal is that you're here without my permission. I asked you to leave on Friday, and you didn't, so I'm asking again. Please pack your things and go." Craig looked at me as if I had grown a second head. When the locksmith's truck rolled into the driveway, Vanessa crossed her arms and said, "You're being ridiculous. Mom's going to hear about this." "I'm sure she will, but right now, I need you to leave." A man in his 50s nodded at me as he came out with a toolbox and said, "Good morning. Are you the proprietor?" "Yes," I replied. "I appreciate you coming." Craig's face flushed. "This is crazy." Vanessa's eyes widened. "You contacted a locksmith? Are you serious?" "I told you I needed you to leave. I'm changing the locks." The locksmith appeared uneasy. "Should I, return later?" "No," I said firmly. "Please go ahead and start. They'll be leaving soon." Vanessa looked at me as if I had betrayed her, as if I were the antagonist in this tale, but I didn't care. "You're going to lock out your own sister." "I'm going to protect my property, which is my right." The kids seemed perplexed, asking why they had to leave when they were having a good time, and it took them 45 minutes to pack. Vanessa slammed drawers and muttered under her breath while Craig loaded their car with exaggerated movements, making sure I saw how upset he was. I was tired of being the one who bowed, who made concessions, who gave up what I needed to keep everyone else happy. This was my line, and I wasn't crossing it. When they were finally ready to leave, Vanessa turned to me one last time, her face blotchy from tears, real or staged, I couldn't tell. "I can't believe you're doing this. We're your family." "You didn't ask permission," I said quietly. "You just took what you wanted." Vanessa told them Aunt Erica was being mean. I stood on the porch and watched, my arms crossed. I didn't help, I didn't apologize, I just waited. Normal people don't act like this, normal people respect boundaries. Craig stepped between us. "Let's just go. She's not worth it." They got in their car and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust behind. She snapped because I didn't think I had to ask. After an additional hour, the locksmith completed his work, handed me 2 new keys, and gave me a pitying look. "Family trouble?" I said, "Well, these locks are solid. No one's getting in without your permission now." I watched till they vanished down the mountain road. I thanked him, paid his fee, and stood in my cabin, which was finally mine again, feeling exhausted. I had won one battle, but I knew the war was far from over. My mother's phone rang, and I answered, "Hello, Erica. What the devil is happening?" Vanessa just called me while sobbing. When she showed up without permission, she said, "You kicked her and the kids out of the cabin." I gently responded, "I didn't kick them out. Since she's your sister, when does she need permission?" "You sound like a lawyer, not a daughter. This is family. We share things in this family." "No, Mom." I continued, "You expect me to share things, but when I say no, that's somehow wrong." My mother's voice rose. "Since it's my property, I have the right to choose who uses it." With 2 children to care for, Vanessa wanted a break. "You're being selfish," she replied. "You have all the time in the world, and you're single. Why didn't you simply let them remain?" This was the script I'd heard my entire life, I continued, closing my eyes and taking a deep breath. Vanessa needed things, and she deserved them, and I was supposed to move aside and make room because I needed a break too. My mother said, her voice icy, "We raised you to be kinder than this. You raised me to put everyone else first," I said. "But that's not kindness. That's just being a doormat. And this is my cabin. I worked for it. I paid for it. And I have the right to say no. Your father and I are very disappointed in you." She hung up, and I sat down on my couch and gazed at the wall, feeling a little bad. "How dare you speak to me like that?" I said, "I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to set boundaries. And if that makes me selfish, then I guess I'm selfish." A part of me wondered if I was overreacting, but a stronger part of me knew I was right. So I ignored my family's calls and texts for the remainder of Monday, went hiking, prepared dinner, and sat on my deck as the sun sank behind the mountains. The air was cool. The silence was perfect. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years, but as the night wore on, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that this wasn't over because Vanessa wasn't the kind to let things go. She'd always gotten her way, played the victim when things didn't go her way, and coerced our parents into supporting her. I took out my phone, opened my email, and combed through previous messages until I found the one I was looking for, a conversation I'd had with Vanessa 6 months prior. She wouldn't forgive me for embarrassing her and making her seem awful in front of her husband and children. "You always put yourself first," she claimed when I refused her request to borrow $5,000 for a down payment on a new car, causing her to become irate and accuse me of being frugal. I had replied that I was saving for the cabin and couldn't afford it. After a long moment of staring at that message, I opened a new note on my phone and began writing down all I could recall. The list was lengthy, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it yet. It included all the times Vanessa had borrowed money and never paid it back. Guilt tripped me into watching when I had plans, and taken something of mine without asking, and acted like I was the issue when I objected. However, I knew I had to record everything because I wanted to be ready if things escalated, as I suspected they would. I drove back to Boulder on Tuesday morning and went to work. When my coworker, a woman named Jenna, asked how my weekend was, I gave her a hazy response. Although she didn't press, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened as I sat at my desk looking at project timetables and spreadsheets. Vanessa had gone too far, my family had rejected my feelings, and I was tired of acting as though it didn't matter. The remainder of Tuesday went by in a blur as I went through the motions at work, attended meetings, answered emails, and looked over design mock-ups, but my thoughts kept returning to the cabin. I opened my laptop and began looking for property lawyers in Colorado, not sure if I would need one, but wanting to be prepared because something told me this was just the beginning. My mother's messages began stern and disappointed, then gradually changed to worried and pleading, and by the time I got home that evening, I had 17 missed calls, 12 from her, 3 from Vanessa, and 2 from my father. I made myself dinner, poured a glass of wine, and then listened to the voicemails. The first of Vanessa's messages was angry. "I can't believe you changed the locks. That's so petty. You're acting like a child. Erica, please give me a call back. We need to talk about this. Your sister is extremely unhappy. The kids are questioning why you don't love them anymore. Please just give me a call." My father's messages were brief. "Your mother is very upset. Call her." The second one was manipulative. "I guess I know where I stand with you now. After everything I've done for you." The third one was silent, save for her sobbing. Hours later, "Erica, this has gone too far. You need to apologize to your sister." I erased them all. I set my phone down and prepared for work after receiving a text from Vanessa on Wednesday morning, saying, "I hope you're happy. Mom had to take blood pressure medicine as a result of the stress you caused." My mother, Vanessa, and even my Aunt Patricia, whom I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, sent me a message saying that she was disappointed in me and that family members were supposed to forgive one another. But I wasn't going to engage, I wasn't going to defend myself, I hadn't done anything wrong, and I wasn't going to be coerced into feeling guilty. I had only set a boundary and done nothing that needed forgiveness. By Thursday, I was worn out and beginning to question myself due to the daily onslaught of calls and messages. Perhaps I was being selfish. Perhaps I should have just let them remain. Perhaps I was overreacting. But then, on Thursday afternoon, my property manager, Beverly, sent me an email with the subject line, "Incident Report, Your Property." As soon as I opened it, my stomach fell. Beverly drove up to check on my cabin after a neighbor reported seeing people there on Wednesday night, according to the email, and discovered that someone had broken a window on the back door and entered the property. There was evidence that someone had been inside, but nothing that looked like it had been stolen. Beverly had called the sheriff's office, and they had recorded the break-in, advised me to file a formal report, had the window fixed, and sent me the bill. I stared at the email, my hands shaking, and realized that someone had broken into my cabin. There were muddy footprints, dishes left in the sink, and the thermostat turned up. "I just got your email," I said, calling Beverly right away. "Do you know who did this?" "The sheriff took some photos," she said, "but there were no fingerprints or clear evidence. Whoever did it was careful." "Was there a car in the driveway?" I asked. "Do you know who might have done this?" The neighbor claimed to have seen a dark SUV, but they were unable to obtain a license plate number. I was hesitant to accuse Vanessa without any evidence because I would appear paranoid, but if I remained silent, she might do it again. I have a suspicion, I said cautiously, but I can't prove it yet. Well, I'd recommend installing security cameras, Beverly said. And you should notify the sheriff if you believe that a certain person may be pursuing your property. I thanked her and hung up, then I sat at my desk and stared at the wall with a rage I had never felt before. I was certain that Vanessa had broken into my cabin. She was upset about being evicted and the locks being changed, so she made a conscious decision to prove a point. She likely persuaded Craig to drive over there during the week, smash the glass, and still use the home. I picked up my phone and called the Greenwich Sheriff's Office. And when I told the deputy that I was the cabin's owner and that I wanted to file a formal report about the break-in, he took down my information and said someone would get in touch with me. It was illegal, and it was vindictive. I called a property lawyer named Keith, who specialized in real estate problems, and I detailed the situation, the spare key, the improper use, and the break-in, something I should have done days earlier. He listened intently before asking some questions, such as, "Do you have any proof that your sister was the one who broke in?" I replied, "Not yet, but I'm going to get it." "Good," he said. "In the meantime, I'd recommend documenting everything. Save all the texts and voicemails, take pictures of the damage, and install security cameras as soon as possible." I asked, "What are my legal options?" He replied, "You can send her a cease and desist letter, which would make it clear that any further unauthorized access will result in legal action. And you can pursue criminal charges for trespassing and property damage if you can prove she broke in. But let's start with the cease and desist and see how she reacts." I thanked him and hung up, feeling a strange sense of clarity that I wasn't helpless, that I had options, and that I was going to use them. That evening, I drove to a home security store and purchased 2 outdoor cameras with motion detection and night vision. "And if she ignores it," I asked, "then you escalate. Restraining order, lawsuit, whatever it takes." I went home, took screenshots of every text conversation, organized my proof, and paid extra for expedited shipping to the cabin after the salesperson helped me select a system that I could monitor from my phone. I saved all the voicemails, printed off the Beverly email and the window repair invoice, and by the time I went to bed, I had an inch-thick folder. Vanessa believed she could scare me, that I would give in, apologize, and let her do anything she wanted, but she was mistaken. The security cameras had arrived, and I needed to install them myself. I couldn't wait for a professional or risk Vanessa showing up while someone else was there. So I took Friday morning off work and drove up to the cabin, knowing that by the time I was done, she would regret ever entering my cabin. What if Vanessa returned while I was there? What if she had already returned and done more damage? What if she brought Craig and they confronted me? I kept my phone on the passenger seat, prepared to call the sheriff if necessary. The drive felt longer than normal. The cabin was quiet, the windows were intact, and everything appeared normal when I pulled into the driveway. I used my new key to unlock the door and entered the cabin, which smelled stale, as if someone had turned up the heat and left it running for hours. I went through each room, looking for any indications of disturbance, and in the kitchen, I discovered dishes in the sink. They hadn't even bothered to clean up after themselves. So I took pictures with my phone before installing the security cameras, one facing the back door, one facing the driveway, and found that it was easier than I thought it would be. An hour later, I had both cameras linked to my phone and could view live footage from anywhere. As I was wrapping up, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. "Your father and I are coming to see you this weekend. We need to talk about this situation with your sister." I stared at the message, which said that they were coming to Boulder, to my apartment, to corner me and make me make amends with Vanessa. I felt a tiny sense of victory if Vanessa returned. She responded immediately, "We're your parents. Make time." I don't believe that's a smart idea right now. I texted back, "I'm not available this weekend." I typed, "Enough, Eric. On Saturday afternoon, we will arrive. Go home." My chest constricted. They were demanding, not inquiring. I was tired of following their rules, so I texted, "I've set a boundary with Vanessa, and I'm setting one with you, too. I need space." I waited for her response, then added, "And if I refuse, I'd be the disrespectful daughter who turned her back on her family." It took 5 minutes. I didn't respond, so I sat on my deck and gazed at the mountains for the next hour, trying to calm the anxiety that was rising inside of me. I had never refused to see my parents or stood up to them in such a way, and I felt like a bad person for doing so. On Saturday, however, I stayed in my apartment, turned off my phone, and read, cleaned, and tried not to think about whether my parents had really driven to Boulder. I turned my phone back on at around 5 o'clock in the afternoon and saw that there were 8 missed calls and 12 text messages. The first few of which were from my mother, who said that they were outside my building and that I needed to come down. Then the messages turned angry. "I don't know who you've become, but this isn't the daughter we raised. I can't believe you're doing this. Your father is devastated. This is the last straw, Erica." Finally, my father sent a message, "We drove 3 hours to see you, and you won't even open the door." I put my phone down and felt tears well up in my eyes, not because I felt bad about what I had done, but because I realized how little they understood me. They believed that I was the issue, that I had changed, but in reality, I had simply stopped acting. Sunday went by without incident, and I ignored the calls and messages. I cooked a nice dinner, went for a run, and watched the sunset from my balcony, but Monday morning was a new surprise. I woke up to a notification on my phone from the cabin's security camera, saying that motion had been detected. I opened the app and saw a dark SUV parked in my driveway, and 2 figures were approaching the cabin. I zoomed in on the grainy but clear video. Craig was tall and broad-shouldered, and the other was shorter and had long hair. They were back, Vanessa. My heart was racing as I watched them approach the front door, where Craig tried the handle and discovered it was locked before making his way to the back. Vanessa remained by the car, scanning the area anxiously. Craig was going to break in again, so I watched him inspect the back door, saw that the window had been fixed, and then took something out of his pocket, a crowbar. I grabbed my phone and dialed the sheriff's office, and the dispatcher answered, and I spoke quickly, my voice shaking, because I have security footage of 2 people trying to break into my property. "They're there now." She wrote down the address and said a deputy would be sent right away. I continued to watch the live feed. Craig was now attempting to pry open the back door, and Vanessa approached him, said something I couldn't hear, and then turned to face the camera. She froze, seeing it. They both rushed back to the SUV and sped off, but it was too late. I had everything on video. 20 minutes later, my phone called, and it was the deputy. "Miss Erica, we just arrived at your property." She grabbed Craig's arm and pointed. Craig looked up, noticed the camera, and dropped the crowbar. I downloaded the video from the app and emailed it to the deputy, who called me back 10 minutes later. "We have clear footage of the 2 people," he said. "Do you know who they are?" "No one is here, but we can see evidence of an attempted forced entry on the back door." "Do you have security footage?" "Yes," I said.